What's up, guys? My name is Joseph, and no, your computer screen isn't broken. I'm just broke and recording this video on my $85 digital camera. You know, I just think it adds this super romantic, nostalgic, vintage. Yeah, I just can't afford a camera. Anyways, this year, a goal of mine was to finally start a YouTube channel. Or I should say start another YouTube channel. I'm kind of a veteran from way back in the day, but I was thinking, what's a niche I can really fill? What's like a massive void on this platform that no one is really doing yet? And then it came to me. I'm gonna be the first white guy on YouTube to talk about movies. No, thank you. Oh my gosh, you really should have. Jokes aside, movies really are my life's biggest passion. I actually just graduated a semester early from UT Film School, so now I can do everything I could have done already, but with tens of thousands of dollars of student debt. Enough about me though. This video, the first on my channel, is going to be a look at what I think are some of the most anticipated, exciting movies that are going to be coming out in 2025. Before we begin, and I truly don't say this to sound pretentious, but this list is not going to include the normal clickbaity, larger blockbuster titles like Fantastic Four or the Minecraft movie. If you're looking for a video like that, this probably is not going to be the channel for you. While I do strongly believe that movies like that have their place, in this list, I'm going to try to be taking a look at some smaller movies that are being made by directors or a group of creatives that have a real vision, rather than whatever studio blockbuster is being pushed out to try to increase their market share. That said, this list will still include larger titles if I think that the level of quality and attention to detail and personal attachment that the creatives are taking into it is really going to shine through. Think of a movie like Dune Part 2 from last year. Anyways, maybe I'm the only one who will find a list like this not completely boring, but hey, this is my channel, this is my list, so have at me. Oh, and one more thing, a bit more serious. If I don't mention the movie that you are maybe the most excited to see and you feel some type of way about it, please leave a hate comment down below. I hear those are great for engagement. I'm really trying to grow this channel. It would be a huge favor. All right, without further ado, let's jump into the list. We're going to go in a loosely ascending order, meaning that we'll be going towards the movies I am most excited for at the top. But starting off at number 25, we still have one I'm incredibly excited about, and that is One of Them Days. This movie actually comes out in about a week from when this video is going up, and as I'm sure you may have noticed, it features my bestie SZA in her feature film acting debut. Now, that alone was enough to put this film on my list, but coupled with the fact that she'll be acting alongside Keke Palmer, most notable recently from Jordan Peele's Nope back in 2022, leaves a lot to be really excited about. This film, though not necessarily looking like it might break any new ground, definitely looks like it can be a lot of fun based on that trailer. The film centers on the friendship between Alyssa and Drew after Alyssa's boyfriend blows all of their rent money and they have to figure out how to make it back or they will be evicted. And of course, hijinks ensue. I think comedy is a bit of a dying genre, but seeing one of the world's largest pop stars joining forces with a fantastic actress all around in Keke Palmer definitely grabs my attention. Next up on this list at 24, we have James Gunn's Superman. I know this is a bit ironic given my whole spiel at the beginning about not putting studio-backed blockbusters on this list, but given the director, I am willing to give this movie a little bit more credit. James Gunn is a blockbuster veteran at this point, and in my opinion, his movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Guardians trilogy, are without a doubt the most emotionally rich films of that entire franchise. Though there is every reason to be skeptical that this might just be another unnecessary, heavily produced studio product meant to sell toys, I want to give this movie a little bit of credit. The fact that James Gunn was able to stand out and leave an imprint on his studio-backed movies when classically directors have absolutely no real effect on the way that those movies turn out and feel gives me hope that he can do something special with this movie, especially knowing his love for the character. So, with all of that said, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that we can actually get something pretty good out of this. Next up is a much smaller movie that I only found while doing research for this video. At 23, we have Bunny Lover, described as an intimate story of a cam girl who has a slowly deteriorating relationship with her father and an increasingly toxic relationship with a client. Sex work is something that has only recently finally started to become destigmatized in popular culture, Recently, we've seen huge, loud movies like Poor Things and Anora tackle the subject. But I think this one has a chance to be particularly different because it's supposed to be a much more subdued, intimate, grounded, realistic depiction of what is a very contemporary form of sex work, camgirls, which I don't really think has been in movies that much to my knowledge. The other huge draw for me personally is that this movie is being both produced by and starring Rachel Sennett of Bottoms and many other amazing projects. Sennett is obviously looking poised to become one of the freshest new faces in the industry, and so anything co-signed by her, coupled with the subject matter that this story is going to tackle, definitely gets me interested. Next up, we have one which I will wholeheartedly admit is a purely biased take. At 22, we have Love Hurts, the directorial debut of Jonathan Eusebio. This is a sort of underbelly crime world comedy in which an agent can't escape his past and gets pulled back in. But this one is different because that agent is played by none other than my future husband, Ke Huy Quan. Yes. Again, I won't lie. The entire reason this film is even on the list is because of Quan, but that is a badge that I will wear proudly and shamelessly. I love that man with my entire heart. This is yet another one that I don't think will necessarily do anything revolutionary, but honestly, all I need is some solid action, some solid comedy, some heart, next to one of my favorite actors of all time. Oh, and it's also going to have Marshawn Lynch, who was genuinely excellent in Bottoms, so... At 21, we have Good Fortune, the directorial debut of Aziz Ansari. To be honest, a lot of these movies don't have the most information on them yet, so I kind of just had to trust my gut and rank them based on what talent is already attached. This new comedy is going to follow an inept angel, Gabriel, as he switches the lives of a struggling gig worker and a wealthy capitalist. I have a feeling this is probably going to be one of those eat the rich class commentary comedies that have been really popular lately. Movies like this can honestly be a bit hit or miss, especially when the people who are behind them are probably the last people who should be making them, but I don't think that's going to be a problem with this one. The film will also feature Aziz Ansari himself, Keanu Reeves, Seth Rogen, Keke Palmer, and Sandra Oh, which is just a fantastic cast all around. At 20, we have The Bride, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, a new addition to the world of Frankenstein in cinema. This film will follow Frankenstein's monster, played by Christian Bale no less, as he visits a scientist in Chicago to ask the favor of making him a companion. Outside of Gyllenhaal and Bale, the description of the movie itself is really what piques my interest. It's described as having a combustible romance, the attention of the police, and a wild, out-of-control social movement. All of that just seems like it can make for a unique, exciting, potentially thought-provoking watch. At number 19, we have Black Bag. This one was really put here just out of respect for the director, Steven Soderbergh, most popular for directing the Ocean's series as well as Magic Mike, but he also has a long history of classics going back decades, such as Sex, Lies, and Videotape, featuring Cate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender, and with a trailer that promises action, suspense, romance, eroticism. I really just couldn't leave this one off the list. Next up, at number 18, we have Marty Supreme. For this one, though the plot doesn't necessarily jump off the page for me personally, being about 1950s ping pong culture, it was directed by Josh Safdie, director of Uncut Gems and Good Time, and it was picked up by A24, who can reliably be expected to distribute quality films. But maybe the real kicker for this one is the cast. Are you ready for this? The cast features Timothée Chalamet, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Tyler, the Creator. Now, Tyler alone probably would have been enough to put this movie on the list, but the rest of the talent involved is a beautiful, delicious cherry on top. At 17, we have the third installment of Rian Johnson's Knives Out series. This one entitled Wake Up Dead Man. I was a huge fan of the first one. I thought it was well-researched, well-written, well-directed, well-acted. I thought it took a lot of the tropes of the classic whodunit and mixed them with new elements to create a truly new experience. And though I'm not necessarily the most excited about this new trend of turning every successful new movie into a franchise, I am still excited that these movies are continuing to be directed by Rian Johnson, who clearly, or at least hopefully, has actual passion for these movies. Starring, of course, the uber-talented Daniel Craig, as well as Josh O'Connor from last year's hit Challengers, as well as Josh Brolin, Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, and a whole fistful of others. This movie earns its place on the list, despite not actually having an ounce of information about what it's going to be about. Next up, we have Warfare, This is yet another war drama directed by Alex Garland. Garland is the creator of such hit films as Ex Machina, Annihilation, and of course last year's Civil War. Civil War ended up being a pretty divisive film, but I honestly think it was just understood and victim to some misleading marketing. But I thoroughly enjoyed it as a take on the American hypocrisy on our sentiments on war, and as a pretty good character study of combat journalists. With Garland, an experienced director at the helm, I have a pretty good feeling about this one, and anyone who was disappointed with the level of action in Civil War definitely won't be disappointed this time around. Just check out that trailer. At number 15 is Outcome, the next film by Jonah Hill, director of what's probably my favorite movie of 2018 in mid-90s. This film follows the fallout in a Hollywood star's career after an old video of them resurfaces. This seems like it can be a very topical, potentially critical movie on our current constructions of celebrities and pop culture and influencers. This film will also feature Keanu Reeves, Jonah Hill, Kaya Gerber, Cameron Diaz, and more. Hi. Yippee! Oh, there you are. I'm hoping that this film will have the same level of characterization and heart as Hill's last movie did, but honestly, if this turns out to just be some kind of darker comedy, I still have complete faith in Jonah Hill to deliver a really satisfying movie. Next up, we have the second installment of Wicked, yet another movie on this list that is in fact a pretty studio hands-on kind of film. But just because a movie has an insane budget and big-name celebrities and is heavily produced doesn't mean that it can't also be fantastic, as was the case with last year's Wicked. I won't lie, I have no real personal attachment to the musical or to any of the actors involved outside of Jeff Goldblum, but it does always make me so happy when a movie with an insane budget actually uses it to try and make something beautiful and original and magical. The worst thing is when you see a $200 million movie that still looks like it was all filmed on a green screen and everything is muddy and colorless and the actors don't even look like they were recording at the same time. Think of really anything from the old DC universe. Wicked was of course the furthest thing from that, so I'm really holding out hope for the second one to do the same. Next up, we have a smaller movie called Flowervale Street, described very vaguely as an 80s family discovering strange occurrences in their neighborhood. I'm really just excited for this one for a super hyper-specific personal reason. The director of this film is David Robert Mitchell, who most people would probably first recognize as the director of It Follows. But for me, the reason I'm excited is actually because of David Robert Mitchell's other breakout feature, Under the Silver Lake. Now, let me explain. Under the Silver Lake is one of the hardest movies for me to talk about and to think about when I try to describe what I loved about it so much. I've admittedly only seen it once. Maybe I was just in a really great mood when I watched it. But genuinely, this is the greatest 3-star movie ever made. I don't know how else to describe it. I recognize that it's not the tightest, not the smartest, maybe not the most mysterious. The characters aren't amazing, the plot is all over the place, and yet, for some reason, I just ate that ish up. It's a really bizarre reason, one that I think, again, I will be the only one who can relate to. Wow, walking in on my YouTube recording studio right here. Say hi to the camera.
Oh my god.
It'll be fun. I'll be able to edit this in as a little like, haha, look at my cool housemates and where I live.
No.
All right, I'll just put a giant sensor bar over you.
Yeah, can you make me like Slender Man?
Yes. Anyways, the film also features Anne Hathaway and Ewan McGregor, which is a huge plus. Not really sure what else to say for this one. I doubt anyone else will relate, but there we go. Next up on the list is Akiva Schaffer's The Naked Gun. The original The Naked Gun from the 80s is literally my favorite comedy of all time. It is without a doubt the most jokes per minute movie where every single joke lands. It is genuinely laugh out loud funny the entire way through. Combined with Akiva Schaffer, who you may know as a writer from SNL or as a member of The Lonely Island, there's good reason to have faith that this 2025 comedy might actually be funny. Featuring Liam Neeson as the son of the original Frank Drebin, as well as Pamela Anderson and Busta Rhymes, I think this could be one of the surprise hits of the entire year. All right, and just outside of the top 10, at number 11, we have The Monkey, directed by Osgood Perkins. This one is exciting because Perkins directed one of my favorite horror movies of 2024 in Longlegs. I know some people felt that the marketing was a little misleading or that it might have been a bit contrived, but honestly, I found it to be a really bold, fresh new addition to horror. It just had really solid suspense. It was shot beautifully. Like, the amount of times the characters were blocked and lit in such a way that it just draws your eyes straight to the background, and you just sit there staring, waiting for something to pop out of the darkness because you're so certain that it will. It was just really effective, and though I don't think it perfectly stuck the landing, I still think this is one of the best horror movies we've had in recent years, so I have to give a shout out to Osgood Perkins' next one. Starting the top 10, this one is again a bit ironic given my whole anti-blockbuster spiel at the beginning, but as I said, when the resources that are put into a blockbuster are all actually visible on the screen, that is also a true testament to the ability to make a piece of art. And so I do have to admit that I am genuinely so excited for the next Avatar movie, Avatar: Fire and Ash. I do honestly get the critiques about these movies. For some people, the bad writing and the questionable choices to use white actors for characters that are largely inspired by indigenous people is enough to say, you know what, this movie's not for me. And I honestly can't say anything about that. That is entirely valid. But for me personally, while they can definitely be cringeworthy, I don't think there's been anything overtly egregious. And in my opinion, when you look past those flaws, these are without a doubt some of the most entertaining action movies of all time. Certainly the best looking in terms of visual effects. I remember when the last one came out, it was one of the few movies of that entire year that I actually had to go back to a theater to rewatch because of how immersed I was the first time. I really don't know what to say. James Cameron knows how to make a spectacle, and you're telling me that this time around there's going to be fire Na'vi? Boy movie as hell, but come on, that is going to be a blast. I don't care. What? There's a little squirrel over there, and he just made a big jump. Ooh la la. At number 9, we have a movie that has almost no information about it yet. The only reason it's on this list is due to the director's reputation. A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey is the next feature film by Kagonada, described vaguely as being about the emotional journey of two strangers. Again, really not the most information, but when you factor in his previous movies like After Yang and Columbus, even something as vague as that starts to feel like it could be a super profound, beautiful, life-changing movie. And it's also got Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie, which literally never hurts. Next up, we have Sinners, directed by Ryan Coogler and starring Michael B. Jordan. Just about any time Michael B. Jordan is in a film, that's a good enough reason alone to go and see it. But I'm also super excited to see Ryan Coogler go back to doing something outside of a franchise. Obviously, he is most well known for his Black Panther movies as well as Creed, but Coogler wrote, produced, and obviously is directing this movie, which based on the trailer seems like a really intriguing mix between action, thriller, and horror. This is just a super exciting lane switch for Coogler, and it's kind of exactly the thing that you would want to see a director take on once they're given more creative freedom. So all in all, genuinely so excited for this one. All right, I got one more big studio blockbuster for this list, but I truly believe it deserves the praise and the high spot. The Mission Impossible franchise is one of highs and lows, but genuinely, everything from 4 and on have consistently been some of the best, if not the best, action movies of the years that they have come out. I know people have really attached to the John Wick series recently, and that is of course now getting its whole extended universe. But in my opinion, the Mission Impossible franchise is still, without a doubt, the premier big budget action series that we have today. And it's honestly not even close. Mission Impossible 6 is not just one of my favorite action movies of all time, it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. And Mission Impossible 7, though not necessarily reaching those exact same heights, was still unbelievably solid. Also, the fact that they actually film a lot of this stuff is so important to me in terms of where that massive budget is going. They're well acted, well thought out, and as this new movie is essentially a part 2 to Mission Impossible 7, I have to say that I was really interested by how they decided to depict artificial intelligence. It wasn't your typical Terminator, robots are going to take over the world type threat. It was like, hey, what if when artificial intelligence became sentient, it stayed behind the scenes and decided to change details of recorded human history in order to raise armed conflicts and spread mistrust and make certain that we couldn't be certain about anything. I just thought it was a really unique interpretation of something that is getting pretty overused lately. But truly, at the end of the day, this just comes down to straight entertainment value, and these movies are without a doubt some of the most entertaining every single year they come out. Now, just barely outside the top 5, we have Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. It's kind of funny that 2 different Frankenstein films made their way onto this list, but I really just couldn't leave either of them off. It also helps that Frankenstein is actually my favorite book of all time. This one is being made, of course, by the aforementioned Guillermo del Toro, who is best known for his Oscar-winning Shape of Water and his cult classic Pan's Labyrinth. Guillermo del Toro definitely has a trademark style that includes whimsy and surrealism and fantasy and horror. So I'm super excited to see his take on one of the most classic gothic horror stories that we have. Featuring Oscar Isaac as Dr. Frankenstein, Christoph Waltz, Mia Goth, Jacob Elordi as the monster. This has all of the potential to become yet another classic by one of our best working directors. And now, we make it to the top 5 movies that I think everyone should be excited for 2025. At number 5, we have Bugonia, the newest feature film directed by Greek weird wave, absurdist, surrealist, complete wacko Yorgos Lanthimos. To be honest, Lanthimos has always been kind of hit or miss for me. I feel like I'm less infatuated with him than maybe popular consensus. I just think for me, he has a tendency to be a little bit too extraneous and loose with the way that he lets his messages get across, and I think he just requires a level of buy-in that I'm not so ready to give him. That being said, he has also made some of my favorite movies of all time when he does show a little bit more restraint. Regardless, anytime a director as completely unique and acclaimed as Yorgos Lanthimos puts out a new movie, it's just something that the pretentious film nerd in me has to be excited about. This one specifically does seem like it can be really interesting too, especially in light of recent events. The movie centers on 2 conspiracy-obsessed young men who kidnap the CEO of a major company, believing her to be an alien with a plot to destroy the world. I don't know if this is going to be sci-fi, thriller, comedy, horror with Yorgos. There is really no way to know. But knowing how critical and scathing and offbeat he can be, it's definitely something that has piqued my interest. It also stars Yorgos Staples, Emma Stone, and Jesse Plemons. At number 4, we have The Running Man, directed by Edgar Wright. This is an adaptation of an old Stephen King book by the same name, in which a man enters a game show competition where he must survive professional killers for 30 days in order to win a cash prize. The concept alone is really intriguing, especially given that the source material is obviously from a pretty reliable writer, but it's really the fact that it's being directed by Edgar Wright that has me so excited about this movie. Wright, of course, is most well known for directing Baby Driver, Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I'm just very interested to see how this movie is going to turn out, because he's obviously most well known for his kind of wacky comedic style, and yet there are reports saying that this is going to try to be a lot more faithful to the darker, more dystopian tone of the original novel. And I just think that's a super interesting cross-section for Wright to be working within. This film will star Glenn Powell as the protagonist, Josh Brolin, as well as Katie O'Brien from last year's Love Lies Bleeding. Yeah. That was dumb. That was really dumb. Oh my God. At number 3, we have a movie that is really, really interesting for me. Spike Lee, one of our finest working directors, is adapting Akira Kurosawa's all-time classic, High and Low, one of my favorite movies of all time. This new film will be entitled Highest to Lowest. This whole production just seems unbelievably exciting for me from top to bottom. Of course, Spike Lee alone is an excellent enough reason to go and see a movie, but given the fact that he's adapting one of the most prestigious, most entertaining films of all time, whose entire subtext is about public opinion on the wealthy and what people with resources can accomplish when they let their hearts take over instead of their minds, and just the giant chasm that exists between people of different classes, this whole thing just seems like a perfect fit. On top of that, the cast includes standouts like A$AP Rocky, Denzel Washington, Jeffrey Wright, and Ice Spice. I just realized this has been a very interesting year for artists in film, specifically hip-hop and R&B artists. It's being released by A24, which again has a pretty reliable floor as to how good a movie is going to be. There really aren't many films I am more excited about than this one. Keep your eyes peeled this spring for highest to lowest. Now, the top two were very hard to pick between, but ultimately I went with the one that just had a lot of bit less information about it at number 2, Paul Thomas Anderson's Battle of Bactan Cross. I'm seeing in some places that is the real title, others are saying it's a placeholder. I'm not really sure. But regardless, anytime Paul Thomas Anderson is coming out with a new movie, you can bet that the entire film community is going to be salivating. He's a man who really needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyways. With such classics as Punch Drunk Love, The Phantom Thread, There Will Be Blood, Boogie Nights, Paul Thomas Anderson is certifiably one of the premier directors that we have working today. It is always a pleasure to get a new movie from him. Even with the ridiculously low level of information about what the movie will actually be about, Paul Thomas Anderson, coupled with a cast that includes Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, and Benicio del Toro, is more than enough for this movie to skyrocket right to the very top of this list. And that leaves just one spot left. Eagle-eyed viewers and those who are marginally aware of what movies are coming out next year can probably already guess what movie takes this number 1 spot, and it is none other than Mickey 17. This film is almost guaranteed to be a banger. Directed by none other than groundbreaking, history-shattering, international icon Bong Joon-ho, director of Parasite and Memories of Murder, Mickey 17 is a science fiction comedy featuring Robert Pattinson as a worker on a space station known as an expendable. Basically, he is given life-threatening, unsuitable jobs, but is cloned over and over again so that when he dies, which he does several times throughout the movie, he can basically be an unlimited supply of labor for his employer. Bong Joon-ho. Science fiction. Robert freaking Pattinson. Even given just that simple plot summary, you can already start to imagine what kinds of crazy twists and commentary Bong Joon-ho might be able to pack into his new 2-hour and 20-minute film. He is well known for being critical of the upper class and of exploitation and of greed. He is also well known for his unpredictable twists and turns. I literally cannot even begin to fathom what possibilities lie ahead with this film. The cast is also rounded out by Naomi Ackie, Steven Yeun, Toni Collette, and Mark Ruffalo. There is really no reason to believe that this can't be one of the best, if not the best, films of 2025 and a major awards contender the following year. And that is why it is my most anticipated film of 2025. Well, that does it for my 25 movies to look out for in 2025 list. I really appreciate anyone who actually stuck around to the end. I'll admit I'm a little nervous to be starting this channel because I don't think I'm necessarily the most charismatic person in the world, but I really hope you enjoyed and that you learned about some new movies that you might not have heard about otherwise. I plan on having a pretty consistent upload schedule, at least once a week, usually more. Now that I'm graduated, I'll have a lot more free time outside of work, and a lot of that is going to go into this channel. So I would really appreciate it if you left a like, left a comment, and of course subscribe to see what I have coming next. I hope you all have a fantastic 2025, watch a whole bunch of movies, and I'm so excited to be starting this journey with all of you. Stay tuned next week for a new series I'm calling Micro Budget Mondays, as well as a couple of reviews coming out in the next couple of weeks. I love you all. Bye-bye.